morning and good evening if you're joining us. I know that we are in two different time zones, so I appreciate everybody waking up extra early this morning and staying up a little later. We're excited to kick off what we hope is going to be a series of many webinars in which we're bridging our regions and getting to know a little bit more about what's happening in our respective region and the mining industry. It's exciting to see that we have over 140 attendees this morning and this evening, which tells us that there's great interest not only in continuing to highlight our respective regions and our mining industry, but also to understand what's going on amongst each of our regions in hopes that we can bridge our industries and our regions together and continue to grow this wonderful industry of ours. So with that said, I'd like to share a brief welcome video from our lovely mayor of the town of Sahuarita, Mr. Tom Murphy.
Hello, Mayor Tom Murphy here from the town of Sahuarita, Arizona. I'd like to welcome you to an inspiring event dedicated to the future of mining. This summit is brought to you by the University of Arizona Center for Innovation, the town of Sahuarita, the Swedish-American Chambers of Commerce, and the Swedish Mining Innovation. Today, we're here to exchange the latest insights on new mining developments and groundbreaking innovations that are transforming the mining industry in both Sahuarita and Sweden for the 21st century. Our incredible lineup of speakers will showcase the cutting-edge technologies, sustainable practices, and growth opportunities that are shaping the future of mining. We're thrilled to work alongside Sweden and look forward to the collaborations this event will foster between our regions. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I also want to give a few moments to our friends with the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce. Mikael?
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to Mayor Murphy. Good morning and good afternoon. This is Mikael Örn, the Honorary Consul of Sweden here in Arizona. Welcome to the first of several virtual follow-up meetings on mining that started with the Swedish Mining Delegation visiting Southern Arizona a little more than 1 year ago. Most Swedes do not know much about the town of Sahuarita or the state of Arizona. Likewise, most Arizonians don't know much about Sweden. Today, we will learn a little bit about both in the context of mining, where both regions have world-class expertise. My fellow Swedes, did you know that Arizona is the 48th state to join the Union in 1912, and that we have a miner on our state seal to represent one of our 5 core businesses, copper, from a little over 100 years ago. And my fellow Arizonians, did you know that the oldest company in the world, according to Wikipedia, is a Swedish copper mining company, Stora Kopparberg, who issued its first corporate share in 1288. Both regions have a long history in mining and a lot to contribute. I'm an Olympian and I love the phrase, let the games begin. Casey, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good morning or good evening, everyone. My name is Casey Carrillo. I'm the Executive Director for the University of Arizona Center for Innovation, and we are thrilled to have you on this call this morning. So I wanted to provide a brief overview of the event. So we have 2 outstanding panels that we will be hearing from today. One focused on innovations in the 21st century in relation to mining. The second one will be focused on sustainability. So how the structure is going to work is our outstanding panelists will be introducing themselves and their companies. And then from there, we have 2 amazing moderators from the University of Arizona that will be asking them some questions, and we'll have an engaging conversation. If you have questions, feel free to utilize the Q&A component from the webinar feature, and we'll make sure we answer those. But again, thank you all so much for being here, and we're going to go ahead and begin with our first company, which is going to be with Jerry with Hudbay Minerals. So Jerry, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, perfect. Oh, okay. Well, hey, hello everyone. My name is Jerry Bustamante, and I am the Public Affairs Manager for Hudbay, the U.S. business unit that's based here in Tucson, Arizona. Hudbay is a Toronto, Canada-based mining company that's been in business for close to 100 years, and we are primarily located in the Americas. And I'm going to talk to you about our Copper World project that we have in Southern Arizona. But before I do that, just want to share just cautionary information that the information that I'm sharing with you today is forward-looking. Please do not allow it to influence any investment decisions. So the Copper World project, we are in Southern Arizona. Here is a map of Southern Arizona. You can see Tucson, Arizona on the top, the town of Sahuarita further south, and you can see the location of our Copper World project, which is pretty close to a metropolitan area, which is pretty rare for mines. We're located about 28 miles southeast of Tucson and about 12 miles east of the town of Sahuarita in the historic mining district of Helvetia. And as you can see there in Sahuarita, there's already large mining activity that's been going on there for decades. So, and this is a new project. This is going to be an open pit copper project. Primarily copper is what we're going to be producing, and we're going through the development stage right now. So the project is going to be developed in two phases. The first phase is all on private land, which means that we only require state and local permits. And then the second phase, we will go through a federal permitting process here in the United States, as we will be working on federal lands. One of the exciting parts of the Copper World project is a big component of our project is we will be producing finished copper. We will build a cathode plant in year 4, and we will be producing copper cathodes that we will be able to sell to domestic customers here in the United States. And there's a lot of impacts that are reduced by doing that. So we're pretty excited about that. In terms of the economics, total construction cost, $1.7 billion to construct the Copper World project. It will be one of the single largest construction projects in the history of Southern Arizona. It will generate a tremendous amount of for the state of Arizona, local taxes in the U.S. We will create over 400 direct high-paying jobs and expected to support an additional 3,000 jobs. And in terms of where we are with the process right now, we're done with all of our exploration, and we've been going through the permitting process with state and local agencies for the last 2 years. One of the first major approvals that was required was our mine land reclamation plan. That was approved in October 2021. A couple of months ago, we received our water permit, our aquifer protection permit from the state of Arizona, which is one of the key permits. And then the last key permit is our air permit from the state of Arizona that we expect to have in place by the first quarter of next year. So next step for us is we will go into a feasibility study that will take us into 2026. And by then, we will have a fully permitted project. All the engineering will be complete. We'll have a very robust design, and we'll be in a position to make a sanctioning decision. So that's our project.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jerry. All right. Next up, we have Garrett with South 42.
Thanks so much, Casey. Good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Garrett Workman. I'm the Government Relations Manager for South 32's Hermosa project here in Southern Arizona. I'm really excited to be here. This is an event that's kind of a cool bringing together of my past and future life. In my last job, I was the Director of European Affairs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And my first tour at South 32's Hermosa project was that Swedish mining delegation that Mikael mentioned a few moments ago. So it's really, this is a kind of a cool meeting for me to be a part of. Just a little bit about South 32. We are a Perth, Australia headquartered company with about 10,000 employees worldwide. And the Hermosa project in Arizona is our first major investment in the United States. We're up to about 200 employees in Arizona so far. And we are building an underground zinc, manganese, silver, and lead mine, about 50 miles southeast of Tucson, 35 miles southeast of Sahuarita, and maybe 20 miles or so south of the Copper World project that Jerry just mentioned. South 32's, like I said, a global mining and minerals company, and we've really shifted our portfolio to focus on minerals critical for a low carbon future. So for what that means is we've divested all of our metallurgical coal assets, for example, and are really focused on things like zinc, copper, nickel, and aluminum, things that you need for obviously infrastructure, solar and wind energy, and just the future of the energy transition. The Hermosa project is the only project in the United States that will produce as its primary products 2 US federally designated critical minerals, zinc and manganese. And we are also the first and still the only project in the US government's FAST-41 federal permitting coordination process, which basically means that we have a much more streamlined approach. As all of us know, permitting is often a challenge to starting a new mining project. And this means that the federal government has designated additional resources and time to coordinate its approach to federal permitting to make sure that we can actually produce these minerals, one of which we're 95% reliant on just China for battery grade manganese, which makes up about 20 to 25% of every electric vehicle battery. And then zinc, we produce about 6% in the US today, but that will quickly ramp down to almost none as our largest domestic zinc producer in Alaska is nearing the end of its service life. With that in mind, we've received recently 2 federal government support initiatives, $20 million from the Department of Defense to access the manganese deposit, and an additional $166 million from the Department of Energy to build our manganese processing facility, which we will do here domestically somewhere in the state of Arizona to be determined. And in February of last year, we reached an exciting milestone where our board committed $2.16 billion to fully develop our zinc project, which was the largest investment in the history of Southern Arizona. So that's something we're really excited about, making really good progress on the manganese side of the deposit as well. For me, one of the things I'm most passionate about this project is how focused we are on sustainability. We built the first dry stack tailings facility in the United States for this project, which means our water use is approximately 90% less than some of the other legacy projects in the state. That's also facilitated, of course, by being an underground facility rather than an open pit. Another really cool thing, which we can talk about a little more when we talk about innovation, is we're going to build a remote operations center in the town of Nogales along the US-Mexico border, which is basically an office building that can remotely operate or monitor the autonomous operation of a lot of our underground equipment. So people can live and work near their children's schools, their family. They don't have to drive an hour each way to the mine project. They can actually just live and work in town and operate machinery from an air-conditioned room and drive their large machine from a video game chair. It gets a lot of people excited about that. And it also helps us meet our commitment to ensuring that at least 80% of our long-term workforce are local residents who are living in the area today. And our project is in Santa Cruz County, just south of where Sahuarita is, which is one of the most economically disadvantaged areas of the entire state. So it's really important for us that those economic benefits of the approximately 850 jobs that we'll have permanently for our estimated life of at least 70 years stay as local as possible. So it's a really exciting project and looking forward to talking more about it with all of you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Garrett. All right, next up we have Anders. Feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you, Casey, and very happy to be here, part of this seminar. I will try to share a small presentation. Let's see how that works. Oh, I closed down myself. Here it is. Okay, I think you can see it now.
Yes.
So my name is Anders Sand, and I've been working 4 years as research manager of Boliden Mines. But recently I have changed positions into department manager sustainability. But what I will talk about in this presentation will mainly be related to my previous role. So very shortly about Boliden, which you might have heard something about. We are a pretty small mining company if you look globally, but on the European scale, we are one of the larger ones. We have about 6,000 employees, turnover 7 billion euros. Euros is roughly, you can say, at the same exchange rate as US dollars. So then you get an idea. We have 7 active mines delivering to 5 concentrators. And we are an integrated mining, smelter and recycling company. So we also have 5 own smelters. The main commodities that we have are copper, and then followed by zinc and gold. And then we also have nickel, lead, silver, PGE, cobalt, etc. Tellurium also, which is quite unusual. I think what Boliden is quite well known about in the mining world is all the efforts that we do in innovation and technology development. So we are seen as a front runner in technology. And I would also say we have a lot of activities in sustainability. So it's also looked at very favorably, the activities we have there, both related to climate change mitigation and environmental performance in general. I'm not sure if you see all the sites on the map there, but we are located in the Nordic region, so Finland, Sweden, Norway, and also on Ireland with the Tara zinc mine. Since this presentation is supposed to be very short and sweet, only a few minutes, I put together a few pictures to illustrate some activities that we have ongoing in innovation. So we have a lot of work related to automation and electrification in mining. So you see there on the rightmost picture an automated charging robot that we have been evaluating. Also on the bottom left, you see a picture from the program we have had related to automated production drilling. And now this picture is from the Garpenberg mine. We have about 70% of the production drilling being run by automation, and that can be compared to 6% in 2016. So it has been really rapid development. We have a lot of projects ongoing related to electrification in the mine. And you see one picture there from our trolley up in Aitik, one of the northernmost mines that we have, but we also have other trolley projects at the Kevitsa open pit mine in Finland, and also an underground trolley project in the Boliden area. We are also looking at alternative explosives. So we have collaboration with a small company that develops peroxide-based explosives instead of nitrate. So this creates kind of a game change potentially in mining, because it influences a lot of things around the blasting itself. It influences which kind of water treatment plants you need to have. It influences need for ventilation, etc. So this is quite a significant thing as well. Also related to tailings and different types of residues, also from the smelters, we are looking at possibilities to extract byproducts or to find uses of the residues. And you see one picture there to the left where we have the research project ongoing with the research institute in Belgium. And as part of that project, in the end, we built a bus stop or a waiting place for the bus, which is constructed by using mine tailings. We think we need probably hundreds of such examples of using tailings in different real-life applications before it can find public acceptance and be established. So it's a very long road to walk, but I think it's very important to have these projects and activities. Then you can ask, of course, with technology innovation, that does this actually drive productivity and other performance factors? Well, we have in our annual report always one page dedicated to our productivity, and you see that in the center here, where the Boliden mine sites are the black dots, and then you see other mines in the gray color. So you see that we are actually leading in productivity, both looking at copper open pit mining and zinc underground mining. We have really good performance if you look at the global mining industry, and I think this is not a coincidence. It's a result of very long work with innovation and trying to implement new technology and more efficient solutions. And of course, our performance today is probably based on what happened a few decades ago. So it's not simple and fast to do these types of implementation. But I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anders. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Natalie, who will be moderating this first panel.
Thank you. I'm happy to be sharing this panel with you. It's a very exciting topic that we have for discussion today, particularly being here in the Copper Valley, Arizona. So we have a couple of questions about the global minerals demand and also innovation. And I'm going to ask the panelists to be mindful of the time and not take a lot. So our first question is, what factors do you think are driving the demand for new mining operations globally? And I want to add particularly in your region. And this question is for any of the panelists who would like to take it.
Well, I can start if you like.
Sure.
So I would say in general that despite that we have something similar to a recession right now in the world, there's no recession in raw materials. The prices are at good levels, or you can even consider them as high. So I think that some of the drivers that we have behind is that we still have development going on related to green energy production and electrification and manufacturing, despite the ongoing recession. And another important thing, I think, is the deglobalization, where you try to secure more local supply of raw materials. So especially in Europe, you see this very clearly that the European Union, they want to establish more mining in Europe so that we can secure access to raw materials.
That's definitely aligns very well with what we are seeing in the United States.
I think you see it everywhere.
Yes.
I would just say too, I mean, if we're, as we consider this energy transition and we sort of move away from fossil fuels, we're moving towards a mineral-based energy economy. Whether that's, so battery storage requires a lot more minerals than fossil fuel production. Transmission lines require a lot more minerals than traditional methods of energy production. So if we take, like, you know, obviously we're talking a lot about copper, but if you think about zinc, you need zinc to galvanize any steel that's outside. So if you're building more infrastructure, if you're building roads, bridges, transmission lines, wind turbines, solar panels, you know, there's actually exponentially more of this product that you need in a clean energy world than you would have needed previously. And I think obviously, you know, no matter what the political policy positions are on energy, you see this demanded by the market, by employees, by customers. So I don't really know that I think that won't change despite, you know, whatever might happen from a policy perspective.
Yeah, and I'll add, you know, another factor that's really driving the demand for new mining operations globally is, you know, the geopolitical shifts and resource security that we're now dealing with. There are increasing geopolitical tensions and supply chain vulnerabilities that now exist that have really led many countries to seek greater resource security. And this has sparked a renewed interest in domestic mining operations and really diversifying sources of critical minerals. You know, so the push for mining independence is driving investment into new exploration projects. Particularly in countries with untapped, mineral resources. For countries like, like the United States, we're beginning to hear more, the slogan of Mined in America, where we can achieve a new level of mineral independence. But it's not just the United States; it's many countries across the globe that are doing the same. They also are feeling those supply chain vulnerabilities. The other factor as well is we do not have enough new mines coming online to replace existing mines that are reaching the end of their mine life. And as miners, one of the things that we're really good at is we're good at going after new exploration targets to extend the life of the mine. But unfortunately, what's happening is we are just not building enough new mines fast enough to replace the existing mines that are reaching the end of their mine life, and enough new mines to just keep track with the rising demand for critical minerals.
That's very true. And I think it's interesting the role that we have in here with technology, because as we have an increased demand, we also need, our mining operations to be more efficient. So next question that I have for you is, how have the recent advancements in technology impacted the efficiency and scalability of the new mining operations?
Well, I can go ahead and start. Let's start out with automation and autonomous equipment, which is an amazing technology that's really helping us do amazing things in the mining space. So, really the adoption of autonomous trucks, drills, and excavators has really transformed the mining industry by really reducing the need for human labor in hazardous environments. That's our industry is inherently dangerous, and being able to use autonomous equipment in areas where we cannot place humans into harm's way has really allowed us to really take advantage of those opportunities that we have out there. The other nice thing about autonomous equipment is it operates more efficiency with fewer delays and maintenance issues while enabling 24/7 operations, so really leading to increased productivity. And then on the scalability side of autonomous equipment, really automation allows mining companies to scale operations quickly without the limitations of labor availability, which is becoming a larger and larger challenge, and safety concerns. So it also improves operational consistency, making it easier for us to expand operations, in remote and challenging operations. So yeah, automation and autonomous equipment, boy, it's doing great things for the mining space.
Awesome. I completely agree with that. Our lab is actually mine automation and autonomous systems. And we have seen a lot of interest from the companies here in the US, incorporating these technologies and training the people to be able to interact with them, which is also a challenge. I don't know if any of the other panel members would like to add anything to the answer to this question.
I was just going to say, it also obviously, Jerry mentioned it improves safety. It dramatically improves safety by having less people in harm's way. But it also makes the skills that are needed to operate this equipment a lot more transferable and maybe a lot more interesting to different workforces and different populations than maybe would have traditionally been the case in the mining sector. I think it allows us to be a lot more gender diverse, age diverse. The mining sector also faces a really big problem of there's going to be a lot of retirements and not a lot of people necessarily, and you guys know this at the university, there's a challenge of getting people excited about mining. And I think if we talk about, automation and AI, these are things that people understand are interesting, exciting, sort of the next wave of employment. And I think if we can tie that better to the mining sector, we can attract a lot more diverse workforce, which would be excellent.
Maybe I can add a few points as well, that maybe related to what I said before, there's of course a lot of benefits and possible improvements you can make, but it is a long-term game. And technology advancements, they take time, and where we see the best efficiencies now, that's technology that we worked on maybe 30 years ago. So automatic hauling, for instance, there you can have one person running more than one machine at the same time, and it's a totally different type of job also for the people. So it opens up for a broader recruitment pool. You don't need to be big and strong as me to work in the mining industry. You can sit in a control room and run these machines remotely. And it's also a more social job now because you sit together with colleagues instead of sitting alone in a machine. So there's a lot of changes as well on the social side that I think is important.
That's very true. I have a couple of questions already, but I'm gonna leave that ones for the end. So my next question for the panel is, with the shift toward green energy, what minerals are projected to be in the highest demand in the next decade?
Sure, I'll start.
Okay,
I mean,
you can start.
I guess some of the, with the shift towards green energy, I mean, clearly we need all the minerals. There's a lot of them that we need, but if we had to pick out a few, I mean, certainly, lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, copper, those are minerals that are expected to see the most explosive demand, really due to their central role in energy storage, in electric vehicles, and the broader electrification and renewable energy shifts. And these minerals are, they're likely to be at the heart of global mining investment over the next decades, as not just countries but really companies are now racing to meet the growing demand for green energy technologies and having those primary metals necessary to manufacture these technologies and get them out into use.
If I try to be a bit philosophical, I would like to kind of rephrase the question a bit and not maybe talk about where you have the highest demand, but in general, what is happening to the demand? Because now we have a broader need than we ever had before in terms of what different elements we need for different technologies. While before you might have had maybe 6 or 7 dominating metals, now you have maybe 40 instead. And these metals are in very different parts of the loop, so to say. You have some metals that have crashed in price because the supply has been able to outstrip the growth in demand, and you also have a lot of changing demand. If you look at battery technology, for instance, how many times has that changed over our own lifetime? Quite many times. And now the metals that we thought only 5 years ago that would be really high in demand, there we are actually seeing a decline now, and there's other metals that come to replace them that are maybe providing cheaper battery chemistries or other types of functionalities. So I think the supply situation in general will be much more complicated in the future.
Yeah, I would just say the geopolitical aspects of this are important too. I mean, you see countries sort of revisiting and revising their critical minerals lists on a pretty regular basis, and some alignment on what is included. I think we obviously know a lot about sort of lithium and copper and the demand curve that we see. We see a similar one for zinc. You would need 3 Hermosas, which is the world's largest undeveloped zinc resource today. You need 3 of them each year for the next decade just to actually meet current demand estimates, which we're obviously not going to get. So you're going to have this supply demand gap that's just only going to grow. But as my fellow panelists said, it's kind of hard to predict the future, other than I do think obviously the battery storage metals will continue to be a priority.
Certainly. And I think with this increased demand and also the fact that we have a lot of new concerns, particularly for the younger generations, for sustainability, which is a topic of the next panel. In which areas do you think the new innovations will be the most important for the industry to be successful?
Maybe I'll start. I think a lot of it gets to how the industry is accepted by its community. And so with that in mind, some of the questions in the chat have been about sustainability and carbon reduction. You know, we have a plan and a path with our local utility provider to be fully solar powered. And so we would be net zero in terms of our energy use as a project. And, you know, that kind of stuff is going to be the expectation rather than a goal in the future. Similarly, we're going, as an underground mine, we have a plan so that at least half of our tailings get mixed back into a paste and put back underground. So we can minimize our surface footprint and plan to have, you know, revegetate the area afterwards. So you can have a very limited surface impact. And I think that's going to be continued expectation as well. So I think the innovations will come in, like, how can we make mining more socially and environmentally accepted? And I think without that, obviously all of us have had our challenges. The industry has a mixed reputation and a bad history in a lot of ways. We should own up to that and make sure that as we're building new projects, we can actually do them in a better and more sustainable way.
Yeah, I agree with Garrett. I want to echo that. I mean, yeah, that's one of the new innovations that's going to be most important is absolutely sustainability in mining. Making mining more environmentally and socially responsible. And as an industry, you know, a lot of that expectation that it's coming from, it's not just coming from our neighbors and government, but it's now coming from the investment community. The investors that invest in our companies, that invest in our projects, they have an expectation that that we build mines that are environmentally and socially responsible. And when we develop new projects, or when we look at new expansions of existing mines, we begin with the end in mind, which is, how can we expand this project, or how can we build this new project, taking into account the most limited resource that this community has that it will be impacted with, whether it is water, whether it is whether it is clean air, whether it is visual impacts. So before we even put a shovel into the ground, in the expansion of an existing mine or the development of a new one, we are thinking about how we can minimize our impacts, how we can be more socially responsible in the development of these mines. And these new innovations, you know, they will be critical across several areas to, you know, ensure the successful transition, you know, to a green energy economy. We need to contribute to that, but at the same time, we need to operate responsibly. We need to make the best use of the limited resources that we have, and we need to think about our planet. We need to think about our neighbors and the impacts that we're making on them. And again, we have that social responsibility. We feel it. We truly have to work hard to achieve that social license to operate and to maintain it. So that's the approach that now exists in the mining space with expansions and new projects.
That's very
We very
interesting.
much see the same trends in Europe, I would say. Sorry, I interrupted you now. But I
Yeah,
think also sustainability, that's very key. And this kind of a go or no go thing in terms of public acceptance and permitting, that it's not really optional anymore. And also coming to investments, you cannot really secure funding for your projects until unless you have a very strong sustainability profile. But in general, I would say innovation is needed in all different areas of the value chain, also in mining and processing and exploration. So we see a lot of things happening everywhere, actually.
I wanted to add here a question for the audience. So Satar Rudini is asking, what emerging technologies in automation do you believe will have the most significant impact on the mining sector over the next decade? Are there any breakthroughs on the horizon that could revolutionize how we approach mineral extraction? I don't know who'd like to take that one.
Yeah, I can talk on that. which is a really good question. And I think artificial intelligence is probably the big one. You know, one of the things about, you know, mining operations is we track and we measure everything. So we have a significant amount of data. And one of the challenges has always been, you know, what do you do with all of that data? So really AI and machine learning is going to help us quite a bit. And on the side of exploration, you know, what AI is doing is really revolutionizing exploration and ore process. So, you know, AI algorithms can analyze now vast amounts of geological data to predict where mineral deposits are most likely to be found. And what that does for us as mining companies is it reduces exploration costs, and it saves us time. Same time, AI is used to optimize resource extraction, which helps us improve ore grade predictions and really enhance the efficiency of our processing plants. So, you know, AI is going to do some exciting things to us, and then operational optimization. That's a whole different area as well that we're going to benefit from. But on the exploration side, AI is going to do tremendous things for us moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I think AI is definitely changing all of the fields, you know, it's changing the way we do work, and it's also changing the way in which we train the future workers for the industry. I think we have time for one more question for the audience. So I'm gonna take Barbara's question, and she's asking, what do you need the investment community to know and do to be able to build a more sustainable mining industry?
It's a great question. I think the industry or the finance sector and the investment community, I think is growingly aware of the need for this industry. And I think that's a combination of the geopolitical risk factors we've talked about, as well as the fact that you can't have an energy transition and you can't have sustainability without increased mineral production. And so, as we talked about also, like incentivizing doing it the right way is another way the investment community can sort of push the mining sector in the right direction. You know, I don't think there's a debate anymore about whether we need more minerals. It's more about, you know, can we work together? Can we friend shore? Can we, you know, do domestically what we can, and, you know, find the right policy environment to make that feasible. But then also, can we invest in those companies and those actors that are doing things the right way, that are investing in their community, that are working with their neighbors rather than in opposition to or trying to hide from. And I think obviously we're all pushing in that direction, but I think the finance community has an important role to play there as well.
If I add something there, I would mention something that is a bit bugging me, and that is that we always deal with different types of trade-offs between CO2 emissions and water treatment processes to treat metal emissions, etc. So quite often these go against each other in different ways, and sometimes the focus is maybe too one-eyed at one certain thing, and then you have drawbacks somewhere else that you are not thinking about. So I would like to see maybe a more kind of holistic understanding, and then maybe some help with the prioritization as well in some cases.
Good. I have to say that's definitely a common topic for us as well. I think people's perception of the industry is super important. I think it's everyone's job, you know, to advertise the industry as something that is actually pushing an innovation-based economy that can have an amazing impact on local economies. With that, I would like to thank the panel members, and I will give it back to Casey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie, and our panel members for the first session. We really appreciate it. All right, we are going to transition over to our second panelist session. That's going to be focused on sustainability. So Laura, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you. So that way you can go ahead and introduce yourself and Sylvan Source. And then we'll have some others and we'll get back into the panel discussion.
Okay, let me just pull this up.
No worries.
Are you able to see the screen?
It's still loading. Yep. If you just want to go to presentation mode, then we'll be all set.
I'm in presentation mode here. Just let me know when you are there.
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, great. So Sylvan Source is a University of Arizona Center for Innovation technology company. Our deep expertise is in thermal energy management systems and controls. We have 3 application area focuses. The first is water treatment, where we have up to a 75% smaller physical footprint and up to 40% lower purchase and operating costs with our system based on our technology. We don't use membranes and we don't use heat exchangers. We've developed a proprietary thermal transfer mechanism that's completely different. The physics are different, which means the capabilities and the underlying cost structures are different. Terra uses the same underlying technology, but this system is designed to move energy very fast and with minimal losses over distances. And then we can also integrate our proprietary technology into other people's equipment to help drive down their system size and cost structures. And we're in conversations with people for deployment across the range of our applications. So for water treatment, because we don't use conventional heat exchangers, our surface area is between 50 and 75% smaller than conventional thermal systems and membrane systems. Our CapEx and OpEx have been benchmarked at up to 40% lower, and our energy efficiency compared to heat exchangers is in the range of 4 times better. This is a recent benchmark that was done this month in collaboration with a chemical company and a company called DiFilippo Consulting, who works closely with EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute. This is for a cooling tower blowdown application. And because we were able to factory assemble, test, and ship as completed skids a 500,000 gallon per day system, our total installed price is coming in at less than half of the cost of a competitive thermal system. Also, compared to membrane systems, of course, the water tends to be consistently clean in the range of 1 part per million generally, which opens us up for a broad range of beneficial reuse applications. We have a huge range of flexibility for energy input as well. So we can be driven off of process stream. We can be driven off of electricity if a company wants to go completely electric. We can tap into exothermic reactions at plants, geothermal applications, and we can be driven by solar. Whenever we're driven by sustainable energy, our carbon footprint is in the range of 0. We only use a little bit of electricity for low pressure pumps. We can design our systems without vacuum, and so it's pretty much at atmospheric level. Terra, you can think of Terra as thermal wiring. So like electrical wire for electricity, Terra moves energy between locations fast. And what it enables is energy transfer without mass transfer. So you don't have to move the steam or the particles or the oils or whatever. You're just moving the energy. And here's an example of a benchmark where almost 5% of net new electricity capacity was added without increasing the carbon footprint. And the CapEx savings was $49 million to deploy Terra compared to what it would cost to acquire the power generation equipment to produce that electricity capacity. That's Sylvan Source.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Abe with ATG. Abe, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Of course. I assume you can see my presentation, my slides.
Yes.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the town of Sahuarita and the stakeholders for the kind invitation. Well, my name is Abe Jalbout. I'm CEO of Auxilium. I'm really excited to share a regenerative approach to achieving net zero by turning mining tailings into valuable resources. Our vision is to really help the mining industry address environmental challenges while creating new sources of value from what is often considered waste. A little bit about Auxilium. So Auxilium is committed really to pioneering solutions for tailings valorization, transforming mining byproducts into high-value products that support decarbonization and sustainability as one of our primary value drivers. Our focus is threefold. So first, we monetize waste streams by producing high-value materials. Then we aid the mining industry by reducing the carbon footprint. And finally, we also want to address the global shortage of critical materials, which has been a common theme throughout some of the previous presentations as well. In terms of our approach and also potential benefits, by processing tailings, we can increase single element recovery by up to 30%, and also multi-element recovery by up to 50% using this process. Additionally, we can also help perpetual storage costs, minimize CO2 emissions by up to 90%, and recover more than 90% of the water for upstream use. This strategy not only provides up to 60% of the necessary reagents for mining processes upstream, but also yields impressive financial returns, up to 90% IRRs, and a 10 to 20 time value benefit per ton of tailings on average. In terms of why this is important, every year approximately 8 billion tons of tailings are produced globally, adding to the already 280 billion tons of tailings that pose environmental and financial liabilities. By processing these materials, we can make a significant impact to the mining industry and also sustainability. For instance, processing fresh tailings could increase current production levels by up to 30% in the Americas. Processing around 200 million tons per year would reduce carbon emissions by up to 2% and also add 3% to the global rare earth element supply, addressing the critical material shortage. Furthermore, if we consider legacy tailings, those that have been stockpiled from past mining activities, we can supply the critical materials needed to meet the energy demand for the next 70 years. There's another really important benefit I'd like to share. So tailings can also supply around 20% of the world's sand needed, helping to really alleviate the global sand shortage and also impacts construction and infrastructure projects at a global level. I'd just like to close by saying Auxilium approach isn't just about managing waste. It's really about redefining what's possible in the mining industry by turning tailings into an asset that can benefit both the environment and also the bottom line in mining projects. Through a regenerative pathway such as one Auxilium proposes, we're really helping the industry manage waste, reduce its environmental footprint, meet critical energy material demands, and also create sustainable value. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about Auxilium, please feel free to reach out. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the panel discussion shortly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abe. All right, next we have Tomas with Hypex Bio.
Thank you so much. I'll just share my materials. Bear with me a second.
No worries.
There we go. Can you all see this?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Thomas. I am the CEO, co-founder of Hypex Bio. I'm speaking to you today from Stockholm, Sweden. Very cold and bleak November, Sweden. It's good to have some social events to attend. Okay, so this is a very quick and brief presentation, so I'll be quite quick. Okay, what is Hypex Bio? Hypex Bio is about explosives, commercial mining explosives. And to put this into context, we need to understand that the mining sector is completely depending on the use of explosives. The absolute majority of all extraction from the earth, surface and underground, is using the drill and blast method. Globally today, in the Western world, we assess that around 17 million tons of commercial explosives are used in the mining industry alone. Use of conventional explosives means use of nitrate salts, predominantly ammonium nitrate. Use of ammonium nitrate leads to a plethora of various emissions. If you recalculate that to GHG emissions, you can see from a normal large-scale open pit operation, around 46% of the emissions of a normal open pit mine in Europe is emissions from the use of explosives. Normally, the use of diesel or combustible fuels on that mine is less than that. So explosives contribute significantly to the scope on emissions of the mining industry. All of these explosives are produced by a handful of suppliers using technologies that were developed in the 70s. Very, very few incremental developments happened in this industry since then. And we are talking about geopolitical risk. The supply chain of ammonium nitrate into Europe comes from Russia, Ukraine, built by Russian natural gas. In Europe, we have suffered greatly with the price increase of ammonium nitrate and dependency. So we need an alternative. What we have done since about 2018 is that we have developed a chemistry that removes ammonium nitrate from this equation and we replace it with hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is basically water with an extra oxygen molecule. That oxygen we can use in a combustion process. By doing so, we only, in principle, get carbon dioxide and water steam elimination process. We do not get any nitrate gases, ammonia gases. We don't get any nitrate leaching in the groundwater nor ammonia. This means that we can solve some of the very, very well-defined problems of the mining industry stemming from the use of conventional explosives. Ventilation from underground mines go down dramatically. Water treatment requirements for ammonia and nitrate for open pit operation goes away. Furthermore, we have proven that we have on par or better performance both in open cost and underground operations. We have developed plants, production plants, delivery systems, charging equipment that operates non-disruptively, which means that you can replace this directly into your operations without changing drill patterns, detonators use, other ways of using explosives. In Scandinavia, hydrogen peroxide can produce an electrolysis process using hydropower. This means that the emissions from the peroxide is almost neutral, which means that we can supply an explosive, a consumable, which is used in tremendous amounts in the mining sector, and doing so in a very sustainable way. We can reduce the emissions, scope 3 emissions from the supply chain by up to 90%. Okay, very, 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 very quickly. 3 problem categories we solved. 1, elimination of nitrate and ammonia leaching from the mine, which means environmental permits for water treatment. We can solve that issue. Cost, CAPEX, OPEX for water treatment plants, ventilation for underground, that problem goes away. This is proven technology by Boliden, for instance. We had a colleague from Boliden speaking. I think it was actually me that charged that loss that you saw on the first slide there. Substantial reduction in carbon and GHG emissions, both scope 1 detonation gases and scope 3 production raw materials. And we offer an alternative. We have a complete separation of the ammonium nitrate supply chain. In the US, the complete supply chain of explosives is controlled by 3 or 4 companies. In Europe, it's controlled by 1 company. So we can eliminate that dependence and that monopolistic behavior. Now, finally, let's do one of these so you can see that it actually goes boom. Thank you. That's it from me.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Next we have Matt. So Matt, if you want to go ahead and share your screen and we'll get started.
All right, yes, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm the CEO of VAST, a boutique Swedish consultancy specializing in landform design. So they say a picture says 1,000 words. So I wanted to start with a visual explainer to what we do. And so the images you see on the right from a coal mine in New Mexico, and they're used to highlight the environmental impact of mining. So ultimately, we want to see less of this and more of this. So this image shows the same mine after it was reclaimed based on a geomorphic landform approach. So it is now 743 hectares of mined land returned to people and nature. So it's a fantastic site to visit. So what is the issue? So the majority of mines today design their waste rock deposits to look like this. And I think we're all familiar with these pyramid type structures. They focus on cost minimization without really thinking about how the form is going to evolve and how they're going to reintegrate with nature over time. And the funny thing about these landforms is they're going to become more natural looking and they're going to become more natural functioning over time. But what's not so funny is they do this through an erosion process. So these forms are going to erode and they seek to become a more stable form. So the issue is you don't have control of that erosion and the mess it makes, which can cause ongoing maintenance and liability issues, plus reintegration with nature becomes an issue. So the result is a landform not returned to people and nature, and it can delay a bond release and site relinquishment. So these are not goals set out by the company. So on the other hand, a geomorphic approach designs stable landforms from day one to avoid these ongoing issues. and they can be constructed for the same cost. So the question is, why are we fighting nature? So what we do at VAST is we help companies design and implement geomorphic landforms from the beginning for the end. So if we can do this and we work with nature, the benefits for a company include creating stable and sustainable landscapes, which we've all been talking about the importance of today. We can increase the likelihood of permit approval, which we're seeing globally. Geomorphic approach are being included in more and more permits. And we build trust with regulators, local groups, Indigenous communities, and investors as well are buying into the geomorphic approach. So since 2020, VAST has introduced the geomorphic approach to Sweden and developed landforms for Sweden's biggest miner, one of Sweden's biggest miner, LKAB. Together with LKAB, we've designed and helped implement Scandinavia's first geomorphic test site, and we have ongoing research projects here currently. And our work played a key role in the recent permit approval of Viscaria mining. And this was the first time in the EU that a geomorphic approach was included in the mining permit. So that's a real brief introduction to VAST and what we do. I guess just in summary, a geomorphic landform design done right returns mined land to people and nature for zero additional costs. So thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Matt. All right, we're going to go into our final panel discussion for this session. So Angelina, feel free to take it away.
Well, thank you, Casey. And I'd like to thank the panelists for joining us for this session on technologies for sustainable mining. I think the first panel was a great segue into this discussion, as they already touched on certain aspects of sustainability and the importance of that. I do have a few questions for you. And if we have time, we'll probably take questions from the audience as well. But we're running quickly out of time, so let's get started. My first question for the panel is, what specific technologies are currently driving the most significant improvements in sustainable mining? And anyone can take this question. I don't.
Let me start and pull this off. Thank you so much for the question. I think there's a pretty standard answer in saying that this is probably the storage of energy, going battery, electric, and automation. That those goes normally hand in hand. And we see, especially here in Sweden and the Western world and Europe, automation, battery trolley, we had William talking about that. Battery electric energy sources as well, on-site production of energy, smarter systems in terms of how that energy is distributed over the mine. So from my side, I think it would be electric and more efficient electric powered vehicles.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'd like to add to that also in terms of perspectives I've seen, and also some of the, I guess, the aspects that were also touched in some of the earlier discussions and presentations. From obviously I'm biased, but in terms of tailings valorization is where I see a lot of these sustainable practices and also improvements to the mining industry. And of course, hydrometallurgical processing, is also going to be significant changes there that will change sustainability in terms of how we can recover more of these critical materials from low-grade ore, and also contributing to a positive carbon footprint.
I guess I would add that I agree with the autonomous operations. I think robust systems that require little in the way of operator involvement, so you don't have to fly people in and out much. Robust systems that hold up well under some changing environments and can even be operated remotely are probably going to be pretty helpful.
That's a good point. I think, with Thomas and Abe's answers, I'm kind of curious if this may differ depending on the regions in which you're in, right? So the technologies that we see that are driving sustainability, are they truly different from what we're seeing in the US as compared to Sweden? I don't know if anyone has any take on that.
Well, I don't spend a lot of time in the US, in the mining industry in the US, but I think that the industry is a global industry. I think that it's very, in my experience, it's very hard to see one benefit and one technology benefit developed in some place and not being, adapted somewhere else, especially for the larger mining houses. They all know each other, they travel, they investigate and try to do best practice. So I'd say it's a global industry and best practices in technology spreads very fast. So I'd say it's everywhere.
There might be some pressure, additional pressure in some regions, like water scarce regions for water, but the need, if you have to have clean water, as he just pointed out, that need is global. There might be a difference in terms of the amount of pressure that is felt in a given region for a given issue.
Okay. So, I mean, in the same line, we just discussed the current technologies that are driving sustainability, but how do you envision technology continuing to impact sustainability in mining operations, just moving forward in the future?
I think just that.
It'll be interesting to see if nuclear and hydrogen become more acceptable in time, because if they are, I think those technologies in smaller form, sort of decentralized, might be pretty impactful.
I think, yeah, echoing in terms of what Laura said, I think in terms of any carbon neutrality or carbon sequestering and capture technologies are going to be really critical, in addition to looking at some of these alternatives such as nuclear and others as well. And of course, greater resource efficiency goes hand in hand, and just in line with the discussions from Thomas and Laura about being robust and also trying to minimize, issues that we see globally, such as water scarcity and things like that.
And also hoping that, these are some, I wouldn't say low-hanging fruit, but some big electrification, carbon sequestration. It's easy to put a cost to that for a mining company, but I'm hoping technology can help drive some of the softer values that we see playing a big role. I think it was Jerry mentioned earlier, that social license to operate, and what we're involved in, obviously the final land use. So you're looking at land use alternatives. And quite often during the operations and during the process, it seems, it's been described a couple of times with different companies, waste rock deposits as the Wild West, where during the time, it's just like we dump wherever we have to, we deal with the consequences later because it's live production, we need to deal with the material. So I don't have the answers. We're doing a few things with my company, but how do we get those soft values in live time to add the complexity and add it into a matrix to put some sort of value on them that can then change the decision-making process, which isn't just purely based on the economics of, let's dump closer to the pit or whatever it may be. So, machine learning was mentioned as well. I think that's a big one because it can deal with a lot of complexity quickly, which the human, we're not so good at. But it gets into a bigger conversation about commissions based on production rates and the driver of mining, which is economics purely. So I hope it can have an impact on those softer values and bring that into the conversation a bit earlier.
I'd like to build on that. That's an excellent point. In terms of when we look at carbon capture technologies, for example, we focus a lot, or at least companies do, in terms of financial drivers from scope 1 emissions. They're just the most valuable ones on the current voluntary markets, but there's other softer values as well, like scope 3 emissions, which I think can also allow a lot of these mining companies to drive towards these decisions, and also these maybe more intangible values also to a mining company that are not purely financially driven. But that's an excellent point.
I would also like to comment that it's extremely important to optimize the processes. I've seen many, many times how inefficient processes and acceptance of inefficiencies have tremendous effect on the profitability and thereby the resource use of the mines. Checking your pull rates, fragmentation, all that. But that's an ongoing discussion. But it's been discussed in the mining industry for decades on how you improve that. But it's in the day-to-day operations, following up that with training, with follow-up and assessment. And I also like to say that the mining industry should also look downstream. the products the mining industry produces have a tremendous impact on how those metals are produced, or the extracts are produced. Green steel is typical. Depending on the grades of iron you have in your proceeds of the mine, that have a tremendous effect on the amount of emissions you get when you actually produce that iron and produce steel. But for instance, in hydrogen production of steel. So I think it's more collaboration between the different value chains in the mining industry, both upstream and downstream. What can be produced locally? What must be shipped? But what products don't we have to ship?
Just one thing that just sprang to mind when you talk about the skill base needed for the development of these technologies, and I think it was nicely narrated before about it's more attractive for the mining industry for these new skill sets to come in. It's not pure the dirt on the face and the shovel in the hand, so to speak. But also then you need to skill these people up. And I know in Northern Sweden, the conversation is, where are these resources coming from? You know, you're in the Arctic Circle, you need to attract people to your local communities. It's not everyone's cup of tea to sit up there in the dark during the winters. It takes a special breed, I think. I've been there for a little bit. So yeah, I mean, technology is a great thing because it gets driven so fast. Some examples from Berlin and Anders, but then having the resources to come and implement some of that as well and keep up to date with it's another factor that needs to be considered in everything.
That's a really good point, and I'm going to go off script a little bit based on your responses. Do you see any barriers to the implementation of these new technologies for sustainable mining? So, Laura, you talked about nuclear in terms of social acceptance. Matt, I think you talked about cost as well, and then you just mentioned just human resources, right?
I'll just start very quickly, the other jump in, but I think it's status quo that's the biggest hurdle for companies. It's what they know, it's what they do, it's what they've been doing for decades, and to change that thinking is sometimes difficult.
I think my response would not just apply to mining, but it's across all industries when it comes to adopting deep technology that are sort of hardware and high ticket items. If you have a piece of software and somebody can try it out for $10,000 for 6 months and decide whether or not it works, and then they can deploy it for, $150,000 over a couple of years, that's quite different from a system that's $6 million to deploy, and there's no reference accounts, or there's very few reference accounts, few reference deployments. So how do you convince, as he just pointed out, the people, the status quo, this stuff works. It might cost twice as much, but it works, and it's been working for 2 decades. You're promising something that's more sustainable, smaller, more energy efficient, and much more cost effective, but it's not been proven yet. And so one of the biggest hurdles for deep technology companies is that crossing the chasm to get your first few deployments, commercial deployments, identifying customers that are willing to take the risk. That's our perspective from our narrow company view.
Let me just build on that. I couldn't agree more. And as an explosive company, I have to say it's exceptionally true. I think it's about understanding that the green transition or the sustainability transition is a necessity for us to survive as a society. And the challenge of any industry, but our industry in particular, is tremendous. And let's say the mental capability of accepting the effort needed to do that transition is simply not something that the management and the boards, the investors of this industry are used to at all. The cultural change and insight requires an amount of bravery and perhaps a piece of craziness to overcome that threshold, because otherwise we will never be able to prove our technology, to prove the value, and verify that it actually works at scale, which is a very big challenge, and to reach a point where we get scaling effects to also answer the question, are we financially viable? Not only sustainable, but are we financially viable over time, right? So I think it's a culture change and a mindset change that needs to be pressured, driven by regulatory spaces, driven by early adopters, and also driven by, pioneers, individuals in the industry that are willing to accept the risk to actually change.
Just like to add to that, these are great points. I think that just two fundamental issues, and I think also a message to innovators, especially working in spaces like mining, is to be very clear on the value propositions. I think sometimes that's lacking in terms of being able to pitch to these boards or a lot of these corporate type of executives. And also the mining industry, among others, needs really end-to-end holistic solutions. It's something that they really makes decision-making an easier transition instead of point solutions. This is just observations we've seen in terms of the mining industry as a whole, but it's also, I guess, translates to others as well.
Yeah, those are really good points. Yeah, thank you for, I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to add something.
It's just quick. I don't know if I'm going off topic now a little bit, but I guess, we talk about the sustainability factor and the status quo. And I mean, companies are putting a lot more emphasis to the social, environmental, sustainability side of things. That's case in point. It's happening. I think a bit of a barrier at the moment, which we just speaking to a couple of companies, is okay, they know what's said in the sustainability report and they know the big ticket items that the company promotes, but then that's the outward communication communicated internally, and how is it actionable down to the people who are meant to be implementing it? That seems to be a bit of a loss at the moment for some companies.
I couldn't agree more. I think we see a shift from, when it comes to sustainability development goals, a shift from the economics and the environmental aspect, and a lot more focus on the social sustainability angle, a lot more these days. So on to my next question. Renewable energy came up on the first panel, and what we've discussed so far is still in line with that. And my question is, what role does renewable energy technology, so we're talking about wind, solar powered equipment, play in reducing carbon emission for mines?
I think that they have potential depending on again, there's some geographic considerations. Solar is definitely sustainable energy source that has potential in Arizona and other parts of the desert Southwest. There's geothermal sites that in some cases can be tapped into. So you could tap into geothermal site to even have underground power generation in some cases. So we definitely see potential. The thing about sustainability, though, is just it sometimes can be a bit geographic specific. Wind isn't available everywhere, as an example. Right. That's maybe the best point, right?
Yeah.
And so if you need consistent operations, then of course, if you don't have any wind, that's impossible. If you've got spotty wind, that's where some of the folks on the panel were talking about the importance of storage, right? Energy storage becomes increasingly important.
I think one of those drivers, just to extend on that, is when you talk about energy storage and 24/7 availability, are things such as, alternative energy sources such as green hydrogen. It's something that's kind of in its early phases, I think, in terms of being implemented at the industrial scale, but it's something that definitely has potential to be able to pair a lot of these solar technologies to an alternative energy source for 24/7 energy production.
I agree, and I also think one solution won't fit all. But yet again, I think that the general idea must be reliable production, and if we don't have reliable production, we need to have reliable storage. And I mean, green hydrogen is certainly a solution, but there's also solutions in terms of green ammonia, and other chemicals which we can produce, which are obviously safer, because we have to understand that the cost and time it will take to implement infrastructure dealing with hydrogen is extremely complicated. So there might be a couple of mid steps there. But I think I think it's the storage and infrastructure of the energy which is crucial, and how we transport that energy. I think we have sufficient capacity in terms of solar or wind, even if it's not evenly distributed, but we have green sources. But the key is, how do we get reliable in terms of quality and access?
Thank you for your responses. I think to build on that, you've mentioned some of the challenges and the fact that some of these solutions and technologies we are talking about could be site-specific or location-specific. Are you seeing any emerging technologies that might change or reshape the mining sector or landscape that you think are promising to overcome some of these challenges that we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I
A
think
bit biased, but you've seen a couple presented today. I think
Yeah.
Love what these guys do. I mean, from my perspective, we're trying to reshape the landscape literally. You know, we're talking about the automate. We're looking into automating the geomorphic design process. So you can imagine you're getting live volumes from your production team, and it's going to design software, which is constantly updating your geomorphic design, which then links in with your progressive closure. So talking about those processes and the automation of all of that, I think the operations, the extraction, the processing, that's all fantastic. I think these technologies need to come a bit forward into my space, which is, it's a dirty word in mining, closure, transition, whatever you want to call it. But you know, some of the great work that's being done in the operations, we can ride on the coattails of, and end up, you know, reproducing really beautiful landscapes that helps further permitting and achieve all these mines that we need to hit our transition targets.
Absolutely. No, I think this is great. I think just from my perspective, in terms of what we're seeing is really where that's going. And I guess it's in line with some of the previous discussions, is also biomining and nature-based solutions, and it's really how we can use nature to further recover and also approach a lot of these issues that you see at closure of mines and things like that. So I really think that's going to be one of the biggest topics in the industry going forward.
My experience that if regulatory and bodies and markets promote sustainable technologies and create a market, people are normally very innovative when it comes to developing businesses and build on that. There's I wouldn't say an infinite amount of technologies out there, but there's a lot of technologies in the drawing board and laboratories that are just waiting to see a situation what makes it commercially viable for them to take the risk. So the technology is out there. We just have to make sure that there's a pathway, a safe pathway for these businesses to grow and prove themselves.
Nice saying back on the back of that. There's enough good ideas out there, not enough entrepreneurs, which I think, you know, I heard that once. I like.
I think in the interest of time, we're going to wrap up. And thank you so much, panelists, for joining me in this discussion. And I'll hand it over back to Casey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angelina, and our panelists. We really appreciate your time and your perspective. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up this event. So I wanted to toss it over to Joachim to give some final thoughts.
Hello, everybody. Such a pleasure having this panel here, and the first steps of having a mining webinar between Sweden and Arizona. I've heard some tremendous conversations here today, and I see a lot of potential opportunities between Sweden and Arizona mining. So thank you so much to our speakers and panelists here today. And I will hand it over to Casey.
Great. Thank you so much. Victor, any final thoughts as we start to wrap up?